Hello everyone. As some of you may know, I'm quite a collector of footprint wrenches, and I have a largish collection now that is gradually growing. But what some of you may not know is that I also collect footprint wrench copies and fakes. Now, some of these copies are really quite good, whilst others are not so good. Some of them are quite horrendous actually, they're not very nice at all. But while I was at the car boot sale the other week, I came across this little fellow right here. And this is what I would class as a very good footprint wrench copy as opposed to a fake. I'll have to explain to you what I class as the difference between a copy and a fake later on, but this is quite a nice one. It's not in too bad a condition, as you can see. It's got some very light orange rust on it. The majority of its finish is still there. The original finish, as you can see, is still there, and it has a very nicely made pivot pin too. It's just a little bit rusty. So I think what we better do is, before we go any further, is to get this little fellow into some vinegar and get rid of this rust. So right here I have some pre-loved vinegar. It's a bit grubby, but it still does the business. And what we'll do is we'll get this little fellow stripped down into its component parts, pop him in there like so, and get some vinegar on the case, because I don't think it's going to take very long to shift what rust is actually on here. There we go, that should do it nicely, thank you. Although I might have a job moving this later on, because I think it's going to pour out the corner here. Right, that's better. Now we can actually move it without it spilling it all over the floor. Okay then, so what do I mean by fakes and copies? Right, let's start with the copies. So in my opinion, a copy is something that's extremely well made and possibly even a slight improvement on the original. This is a 12-inch copy. It's not branded, but we do have 12-inch and foreign stamped into it. It's quite nice quality. I had to make up a pivot pin for it because it didn't have one. It just came with this screw here. But the riveting leaves a bit to be desired, I have to say. Not very nice at all. But overall, not a bad wrench, to be honest with you. Here we have another example. Again, we have some pretty dodgy riveting going on just there. This one came complete with its original pivot pin. This is not badly made, as you can see. Overall construction of this thing isn't too bad at all, and it polished up quite nicely. It does actually have a manufacturer's name in here, Beza. We also have some more marks and a date stamp on here, which I believe is 1936 or something like that there. I'll put a picture up here, a closer picture of it for you, but yeah, this is not a bad make either. Quite like that one too. Let's move along to these two here, shall we? These are very nice, these two are. This one's Polish made. Very nicely done too. We've got no problem with any riveting. It might not even be riveted, it might even be spot welded together or something like that there. I can't see any rivets on it. It's nicely finished. The quality is definitely there. There's its original pivot pin. It's quite nice. I like that one. Here is this other one here. This is made in Czechoslovakia, so we know how old that is. Again, it's in its original paint finish too. It has its original pivot pin. This is probably the jaw is probably spot welded in there. I'm going to say it's spot welded in there because I can't see any riveting. Again, this is a very nice copy. The jaws get stuck together a little bit, but yeah, it's very nicely finished. Very well designed, like the Polish one here. These are both very nicely designed and made. I like these a lot actually. This thing I believe to be an apprentice piece. I've got a video out on this already. picked it up just at the last boot sale before Christmas last year. I'm so glad I picked it up because it's a beautiful piece, beautifully finished, and I don't need to talk too much about it because I've got a video about it out there. Here is another nice little copy. This one's actually made in Sheffield, England. It didn't have its original pivot pin, it only had a nut and bolt holding it together, but I managed to find some pictures of the complete version of this online, and as near as I can tell, this is an accurate reproduction of the pivot pin that I made up. Not bad again, quite nicely done. The jaw insert is spot welded in, as you can see, some very heavy duty spot welds going on right there. Again, not a bad little copy, I like that one. These are what I class as fakes. They're not copies. I suppose you could call them copies, but I prefer to call them fakes due to the poor quality. Take this one here for instance. Some fairly dodgy riveting going on there. We have its original pivot pin. Overall quality is a bit naff really. It's a lot, the materials are a lot thinner. And just look at the end of the thing here. Look at the state of that. Not very nice at all, that one. This one is just about as bad. You can see this jaw here isn't even level. I don't know if you can see that, but the jaw isn't even level just here. So that's how it left the factory by the looks of things. Again, not particularly very nicely finished at all. No, not branded. Neither of these two are branded at all, and I'm not surprised why. And this one's just terrible. This is just awful, this one. Just a bit of black Japanning going on just there. Again, the original pivot pin. I'd imagine these were quite possibly very cheap to buy originally back in the day. Probably dating from the between the wars, I would imagine, all this lot here. So they would have either been exceedingly cheap to buy as opposed to a footprint wrench, or an unscrupulous dealer would have passed them off as genuine footprints. And yeah, they're horrible. Mrs. Rathbone doesn't understand why I collect copies and fakes and a chimera like this here, as opposed to the genuine footprint wrenches. But the way I see it, they're all part of the history of the footprint wrench. Okay, so the this lovely little wrench here only required a few hours in vinegar, a quick wire brushing, and a going over with that polishing block there. And look how it came out. I still can't find any manufacturer's name on this, which is a shame really, because you'd have thought they'd have been quite proud of this tool, because it's very well made. It's at least equal to footprint quality. And look at the fit and finish on this thing. The pivot pin's very nice. I did discover one thing though. It was used by someone who used to braze pipes as well, because we have a little bit of the, as you can see, there's a little bit of the brazing just here, look, just caught on the head. So it's definitely been used for work. It's not been, as you can see by all the little dinks, so there's quite a bit of history and story to this little fellow. We've got a few bangs going on up here, a little bit of damage, so somebody's obviously hit it with a hammer. So it's definitely used during its lifetime. There's a little bit of damage to the knurling just here, look. But a very nice wrench. Okay, so unlike a footprint wrench, the pivot pin feeds in from the right. Here is a proper footy, as you can see, and the pivot pin goes in from the left. Although these two wrenches are exactly the same length, the copy looks, in my view, a bit slimmer because you've got this longer taper just here, so it makes it look slimmer than a footprint, but they are the same size. This genuine footprint wrench hook here has 5 adjustment holes in it, but as you can see the copy only has 3, so it's rather limited in its adjustment. And as you can see, the teeth are a lot coarser on this copy than they are on a proper footprint wrench, and we have the same thing going on the hook as well, but the main jaw on the footprint is a lot longer than the copy, and we don't have the screwdriver stroke pry bar on the other end of the hook either. I have here a 1970s vintage 7-inch footprint wrench, and as you can see, that too doesn't have the pry bar screwdriver on the end of it, very much like this one here. Overall, I would say the quality of this nice little clone here is on a par with footprint. I don't know how hard the jaws are or were when they were new, because this one's showing some signs of wear, but the riveting is very nicely executed on here, and it has a very nice little jaw insert too. Very nice little wrench actually. Quite like this one. I'm quite pleased I picked this one up. It cost me £1. I did actually visit the guy twice, and it was still there on my second visit, so I thought, yeah, I'm definitely having it because of the way you know, the way it looks. It's nice, slimline looking thing. It feeds, the pivot pin feeds in differently from a standard footprint wrench. In fact, it's very similar to my little Chimera here. You can see they both feed in from the same side. If you want to see more details about this little fellow, just click here. I've got an entire review of it. Quite an interesting little thing with an interesting history. I have no idea how old this thing is. Unfortunately, it's got no manufacturer's marks on it either, which is a shame, because if I made this, I'd be proud enough of it to put my name on it. And as you can see, it's been definitely used. Somebody was brazing pipe once with it, you know, with it nearby. The original finish has come off. Not too worried about that. It's nice and shiny. Yes, it's quite a nice addition to my collection of footprint wrench copies. Okay then everyone, well I hope you enjoyed popping over and taking a look at this very nice footprint wrench clone here. If you see them on the boot sale, they are worth picking up if you can find a nice one like this here, but there are some rather nasty ones out there, and you know, you can avoid those if you like, but these are you know, you can get some very nice ones indeed. I've got this one and this one here too. This one is actually made in Sheffield and says so on the hook just here. There is another mark just here which is probably the maker's brand, but that's not been stamped in there very well at all. I had to manufacture the pivot pin for it because it didn't have one. It just came with this here nut and bolts. Didn't want that in there, so I finished it off nicely with this. So this is quite a nice one too. So there are some very nice clones and copies out there of these things. I say my collection is getting bigger all the time for both the proper genuine footprint wrench and the copies too. If I see a nice copy, I will pick it up. As I say, I have no idea of the vintage of this one. You know, the rounded hook would suggest 70s possibly. I have no idea how old this thing is, but it's not in too bad a condition, and it wasn't all that rusty. It only required a couple of hours in the vinegar, a bit of a wire brushing, a bit of a polishing with a polishing block, and here is the result. Alright then everyone, well thanks for popping over to Rathbone Manor and the workshop, and thanks for taking a look at this very nice little clone here. I do like it a lot. Very nice indeed. That's going into my collection right now. As I say, thanks for popping over and thanks for watching.
Ruff, ruff.